Hi, and welcome. I'm Lisa, Vice President, Business Development here at Alta Sciences. Today, I'm going to take you on a quick journey to learn more about our integrated preclinical to clinical model. I'm joined today by two of our key leaders, Ingrid Holmes, Vice President, Global Clinical Operations, and Jennifer Chown, Director, Strategic Programs. Ingrid, Jennifer, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Thank you for having us.
What do you think some of the key advantages are of having an integrated CRO? And obviously that can improve efficiency and timelines and can do a lot of acceleration for sponsors.
Well, first of all, we're all very connected, right? As an integrated CRO, we have all of our service lines and all of our support teams extremely connected. We have systems that support the fact that we can communicate from one to the other, and we transfer the knowledge from early on all the way through the process, right? We also use our Ask Albert system for communication. So any particular requirements that a sponsor wants, they go into our Ask Albert system, and then that system is available to everyone throughout the entire organization. And everyone references that system to make sure that we all are very, very familiar and aware of everything that we are learning and needing to do to support a sponsor effectively throughout the process.
Great. And I can imagine, because obviously we're heading to the clinic, right? And that's the goal.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've got Ingrid and team pretty dialed in early on.
We have that full program. It's coming in. It's all being worked through the preclinical team. Our team is involved, from the very beginning in the discussions and in planning the program, so that we can optimally schedule the clinics and we can plan for the risk, the mitigations that might need to go into that program. Yeah. And then as we're seeing the data come out of those programs and the results as well, we're working both internally and with the sponsor to come up with, okay, what is the best way to move forward?
I think that's key. All of the integrated subject matter experts that we have, that scientific expertise, we have all of it here and, at our fingertips.
So with that in mind, obviously that's different from a lot of the competition out there, right?
Yeah.
What are we really looking for and looking out for, I guess I should say, when we're moving from that preclinical into the clinical?
Into the clinic? Mm-hmm. Well, I think really it's optimizing your plan. So, most times there's an awareness around the clinical plan to then work backwards and create your preclinical plan. If a sponsor is placing the preclinical package at Alta Sciences with a pull through to the clinical package, the program manager will be consistent the whole way through the process. That person will stay with the sponsor and guide them through the entire process as a point of contact, to help mitigate, to help troubleshoot, and that's another thing that's key is really risk mitigation and mapping out potential risks so that you're prepared ahead of time,
right?
And you're successful, right? And you can pivot. You can pivot in the moment, and you've got your teams there that you can use to support and come up with a solution to keep everything on track.
There are instances, right, where there is some data that emerges and it does change things. Maybe we need to pause, right? We need to evaluate, or maybe it allows us to perhaps skip something that we thought we'd have to look at.
It's understanding and recognizing that there will be moments like that, no matter how well we think we're going to plan it. And, having it all lined up so that our teams are ready for that is the key, because if we don't control those schedules, imagine, preclinical's happening in one shop, the clinical's at a different company, the CDMO's at a different company. There's no continuity with the management of that overall program. Yeah. Well, the minute there's a hiccup in one of those groups, everyone downstream is affected. And there's no way that one sponsor would be able to control those schedules across all of those service providers, right? Whereas the more we embed within our organization, the easier that becomes. So if there's a hiccup in the preclinical and all of a sudden we realize, we're going to have to do another study or we're going to have to extend a study. Well, that doesn't necessarily have to completely trash the clinical timeline.
Absolutely.
There are ways to mitigate for that. There's ways that we can start in parallel potentially, or worst case, we are going to be pushing things out. But because we're all one company,
Yeah.
we're looking for areas further downstream to make up that.
I was just going to go there. I was just going to say that, sometimes unavoidably, right, we need to take a pause or we need to be a little bit less aggressive as we're heading into the clinic. But obviously, full service CRO has the advantage of, okay, obviously the clinic has to run the duration, but we have a lot of flexibility then on that back end, right, to make up some time. Talk a little bit about like the centralized scheduling, and then I think your team does a great job of partnering at the right level for the sponsor in the moment. So maybe just a little brief about kind of some of the options.
Absolutely, yes. And as if you want to work with us and really partner on your drug development plan for a particular compound you're trying to get through, we've got all the specialists, as we mentioned, to help our sponsors through that. And we will have an experienced program manager be part of that process with you. So look at that clinical plan, design the preclinical plan, and then walk through the entirety of it with you, alongside of you, setting up calls, communication constantly, and giving you transparent insight into the scheduling and the planning that
So you guys are
on
the
our
glue.
end.
You guys are the glue that holds it together.
Yes.
But I think the other glue that holds the programs together is regulatory.
Right.
I mean, this obviously weaves through the whole process.
We have a phenomenal team of regulatory experts here at Alta Sciences with a ton of background in different regulatory pathways, both with CTA and IND. One of the advantages of having it all integrated internally is that they can look at the emerging data as it's emerging and use that data to write the IB.
Yep.
So it saves time.
So like we got our dose range study kicking us off.
Yes, they're reviewing everything along the way with the sponsor, and then getting into that development of the clinical protocol. They can help set up for the pre-regulatory meetings, whether it's IND or CTA.
Yep.
And they can provide a lot of guidance to sponsors. They know all the ways to go faster or to optimize or to get more more insight from the regulators.
I think, the key really is it's speed, right? Ideally, we're going as
and maybe
quickly as we
easy.
can.
Maybe it could be easier.
Yeah,
too, right.
yeah,
That's okay.
exactly.
Right. I think our sponsors like easy too.
Yeah,
Good.
And I think having it embedded, of course, it provides a lot of relief for us to have that expertise in house, people that we trust that we can go to, for consultation, and we really see it with the sponsors as well. They will rely on them, and they're very, very credible and great at their job. But I think the other thing that is really important is the speed at which they can work.
Yeah.
And the fact that they are working in parallel with the operations taking place. So there isn't this huge lag or gap in time between handoffs. Like the study's over, now here's your data.
Yeah.
Now go away with it for 2 months.
And now we'll start the next thing.
No, exactly. They are starting those documents as the projects are unfolding and as data becomes available. But for the program, it is hugely efficient because you're layering activities on top of each other and allowing for the entire overall program schedule to shrink.
Yeah.
And, days matter, right? And this
Days matter.
turns into weeks and potentially months, over the course of a program.
So this is a good example when it's linear.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not linear.
Right.
No,
so absolutely, and that's okay.
How about an example when we're going very aggressively, and obviously, all preclinical we do is designed ultimately for what we're going to be doing in the clinic, what we're going to be dosing in the clinic. So maybe an example of how we can, kind of co-conduct, if you will, like preclinical and clinical essentially in parallel. So how would that work?
So, of course, all the non-clinical work is supporting the dose and the exposure
at the moment that you're doing. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are definitely ways to be running that in parallel. And what we see more and more often, in our first-in-human protocols especially, is there's got to be an adaptive nature to the protocol.
Very important to have the adaptive language, right?
Yeah. And in many cases, they're fully integrated protocols from the beginning, but there's also a huge amount that isn't decided yet that we leave adaptive.
Right.
And that's done on purpose so that we can plan for multiple amendments potentially while those studies are running over the course of maybe 12 to even 24 months. It depends on how big and how much data we need out of that program and out of that trial. But the key really is to think about, what do you need to get at the end?
Right.
So you're beginning
and when
with the end
do
of
we
line.
need to be at the end?
Yeah.
Exactly. Working backwards, understanding that there's going to be a regulatory submission component there that we have to work through while the trial is running.
Yep.
How do we adapt the design and change it, but still have the support from the non-clinical data? And that becomes a jigsaw puzzle, basically, of how does it all overlap and when can the results be available?
Obviously, facilities have a big play here. Co-located facilities is what I'm hearing really has a big play, right?
Yes.
I think it really is a key, and we're so fortunate that we're laid out in North America the way we are. We have our clinical locations that all are in proximity to a BioWay lab that happens to be embedded with a preclinical lab in the U.S. and in Canada.
So obviously we started early on. We got a really good springboard start there.
Yeah.
And then I think creative logistics on top of this, right? So not always things need to be commercially shipped, right? Like couriers that belong to us.
Yeah.
I can think of a study where we actually hired an individual and leased a car for a year and a half. And we drove samples all day, every day, back and forth. Those samples had a stability of less than a few hours. And it was the most important thing logistically for that trial. And it was completely worth taking the time to organize it that way, because we had 100% control over, the viability of those samples from the time of collection until they were in the analyst's hands. But that takes an experienced group of people to work that out.
Absolutely.
And they also have to have the facility to do so.
I know we have a lot of sponsors that sort of take advantage of best placement and obviously best timing for their own studies. So walk me through a little bit about how we can do parallel conduct, how we can expand trials and kind of be a multi-center ourselves.
We do all the time. And it's really fantastic. So we've got the 3 sites in North America. We're in Montreal, Kansas City, and just outside of Los Angeles. Fantastic team of people.
Yep.
They collaborate beautifully. They are always working together on coming up with the best solutions. But it extends, backwards into the non-clinical and bio.
Yeah, I mean, not to discount, you got four sites yourself.
Yep.
So I am sure that's offering the same advantages, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have got Sacramento and Seattle, right, quite proximal to one another. And then Columbia and Scranton are fairly close to one another. And we have a team of experts, we can optimize the expertise across the various sites, right? We have those teams of experts that can easily relocate if they need to for a particular study need at a different site.
It's very well connected across all of the business units, and that's not how it is at a lot of CROs.
No, absolutely. And I know the sponsors really, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, Ingrid and Jen, I always enjoy talking to you and sharing your valuable insights. We hope this glimpse into our integrated model covering everything from preclinical to clinical has inspired what's possible in early development. And if you're ready for success on your program, we're ready to partner with you. Thank you for watching.